Question number 9, Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Energy and Resources and asks, what recent reports has he received on the electricity market?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, the latest energy quarterly released by MB Today for the June 2015 quarter shows that the average residential electricity cost fell by 1.4%, driven by a fall in both lines charges and retail costs. The last time there was a fall of any kind was in late 2001. The largest factor in this drop in residential electricity cost was an increase in the effects of competition, that is, discounting by retailers. This government believes that competition is the best way to keep downward pressure on prices, and the latest data shows competition in action making a real difference for households.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what does the Energy Quarterly show in relation to electricity generated from renewable sources?
The Honourable Simon
Mr Speaker,
Bridges.
it makes clear that nearly 83% of electricity was generated by renewables in the last quarter. Hydro, geothermal and wind were all up, and non-renewable generation was down nearly 20%. Geothermal electricity generation in particular had a very good quarter. More than 1,800 gigawatts was generated from geothermal, the highest level on record.
Supplementary question, Fletcher Tabuto.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How does the Minister respond to North Power, which said rebalancing of transmission costs would have a material adverse impact on the Northland community, social and economic well-being?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, that the transmission pricing methodology process that the Electricity Authority is running is independent and has an incredibly long way to go. They're looking at many options, and so I would say to the people of Northland, it's far too soon to be jumping to those sort of conclusions that I appreciate the member tries to scaremonger on.
Order. That will not help the order of the House. Further supplementary?
Yes, supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Fletcher Tabuto.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What has the Electricity Authority Chair, Dr Brent Layton, done to deserve $200,000 a year for a pricing methodology that makes regions like Northland subsidise profitable generators and foreign-owned energy-intensive businesses?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Well, Mr Speaker, unlike that member, he has degrees. I think the other thing you'll find is that he has made an excellent contribution to the electricity sector. You think that's arrogant?
Order. I'm hoping it's a point of order. Point of order.
Standing Order 286, the Minister included personal references in relation to the person who asked the question, which should not be permitted.
Order. I'll hear from the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, the question was asked about what qualification he had, and he gave it, gave the answer. And he likened it. Presumably the person asking the question is making a statement that the person who is subject of it, which is also, I think, inappropriate in this House, quite inappropriate to bring a servant of the state from outside the House into question time. But clearly that comparison was made and the Minister answered appropriately.
I'll hear from
point of order.
O'Rourke, who wants to
The particular point is that the Minister referred to qualifications in respect of the person who asked the question, which is completely irrelevant and is not permissible in standing orders.
Order. I think I don't think it is right, actually. I think the answer was perhaps not particularly helpful to the order of the House. However, the tone of the question, what qualifications did Mr Brent Layton have to receive a salary? And the Minister took the opportunity of effectively saying, well, substantially more qualifications than the member. I don't think that's at all derogatory to the member. I think it's the sort of answer you may well have expected to a question like that. Not a helpful answer, but my job is to see whether it addresses the question. It addressed the question. If members aren't happy with it, I guess they should tighten up the conciseness of their supplementary questions.
Speaking to the point of order, Mr Speaker.
No, I've dealt with that point of order. If the member has a fresh point of order, I will hear it.
Could I seek leave to make a personal statement, Mr Speaker?
Well, the member can seek leave. That's over to the House. You want to make a personal explanation about what?
I at no point referenced qualification.
Order. No, order. Order. The member wants to seek leave to make a personal explanation. I'm inviting him to briefly describe it, and I'll put the leave. No, the member... No, order. I don't need that help from Mr Brownlee. I shouldn't have to read the standing orders. The member's been here a long time. He now should understand the way this place works and the way standing orders work. I doubt whether he's got a legitimate point, but if he wants to try it, he can. I'd suggest a quicker way forward would be to continue with his line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I actually asked what the...
Supplementary question, is it? Order. If the member doesn't know... I want to ask a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Sorry?
Supplementary question.
Supplementary... Order. Supplementary question, Fletcher Tabuto.
Why can't the after-tax profits of Transpower be used to smooth electricity line charges?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, because it's a state-owned enterprise.
Order. Order. Before the member starts his point of order, I want to hope that it is a genuine point of order, and I warn the member, if it's any way litigates the territory that I've just covered and ruled on, the member will be immediately leaving the House.
Don't start with a swear word.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Question number 10. Order. Again, I need to caution this member as well in the same way. Fresh point of order, Tracy Martin.
Mr Speaker, I seek your clarification. You have, with regard to Mr Tabuto's question, he did not ask what you said he asked. His question did not ask anything about qualifications at all.
The member will resume his seat. I didn't issue the same warning I did to Mr Marks. I won't act on it. I said that matter is closed. I've ruled on it. If the members then... Order to Mr Mark, I'm on my feet. If the members then take the opportunity to relitigate those decisions that I've made, whether they agree with them or disagree with them, they must accept them. And to continue to relitigate leads to disorder. And as I've said to Mr Mark, I didn't issue the same warning to Tracy Martin, so on this occasion I won't carry the matter further. But in future, after giving a warning as severely as that, the only action I then have is to then be asking members to leave. Question number 10. Is this a fresh point of order?
It's a speech to the point of order that asks for your clarification,
no,
sir.
I've already dealt with the matter. The member will immediately resume her seat, otherwise she'll be leaving the chamber. Question number 10, the Honourable David Cummins.
Thank you.